The downfall of Bob Iger and the righting of the ship that is Disney could potentially be happening next week. On Wednesday, it is the deadline for the votes to change the board, basically. And it's also an investor shareholder call as well, which will be fascinating to see. But the most interesting thing about this is the shareholder vote. And currently Nelson Peltz is looking like he's leading the vote, which means that he could potentially be getting board seats, 2 board seats. And that means he's going to be on the Disney board. Disney CEO Bob Iger. His reign over Disney may be over. Not saying that he's going to get fired, of course. But this is symbolic. It's symbolic of his hold over Disney waning, his hold over the media waning, and it would genuinely spell the demise long term. Because I can't imagine Bob Iger is the type of man that would look to stay at Disney, which, you know, some people would say he's not, because of course there will be a succession plan, but I mean he stayed this long. I don't think he would want to stay that long, or longer anyway, with people that he actually has to answer to. Because currently the Disney board, he answers to no one. Literally no one he's answering to on the Disney board. It's crazy. So let's take a look. Hit subscribe if you're new here, guys. Turn the bell notifications on. And like I said, this is more symbolic than anything else. The symbolism here is pretty crazy, right? So Wall Street Journal reports that Nelson Peltz may lead in votes for Disney board seat. This is genuinely quite crazy. And you've got to remember how long Bob Iger has been in charge of Disney, answering to no one. This is why when I say that this is symbolic, it really is, and it's quite huge. So a new report from the Wall Street Journal is a game changer going into the Wednesday Disney shareholders meeting. So the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Nelson Peltz may have a lead in votes as final ballots are turned in from across the spectrum of Disney shareholders, though exact numbers have not been provided, and the majority of votes may still be outstanding. The idea that Peltz is currently in the lead is a shockwave across the industry. The Wall Street Journal article notes that even more major institutionalist organisations are throwing their support to Peltz in the very late 11th hour. Which, I mean, I wonder why. Because Bob Iger is just a loose cannon at this stage. He really is. This article, by the way, is linked down below. But it even says this, you know, Neuberger Berman supports Try and Slate, citing the company's succession woes as others back CEO Bob Iger and his strategy. So, also according to the same article, a spokesman for Disney said leaking an early vote count was a highly inappropriate attempt to sway votes. So, they're even acknowledging that it's true that, you know, Nelson Peltz is in the lead, because they're like, oh, you leaked that. Crazy. While, obviously, you know, we can't state whether or not the leak would benefit Peltz or Disney. We can't really say. It is difficult to suggest that leaking an early vote data is in any way appropriate, which is true. However, given that the information is now publicly available, it will undoubtedly have some impact on some voters. And will, I mean, the main thing here is, will institutionalists now see a green light for voting Peltz because others are? Or will smaller individual shareholders go to Iger? Maybe. For whatever reason, I don't know why. And also, what's interesting, pundits likely thought that Nelson Peltz had a very small outside chance of getting on the Disney board of directors. Now, Jay Rasulo remains a long shot. Peltz is neck and neck. So if he does manage to get on the board, the response from Disney CEO Bob Iger, who has fought vigorously, and it is vigorously, to stop Peltz, they've spent a lot of money trying to stop Peltz. It's going to be really interesting. Really, really interesting. Really interesting. And they say this, a much smaller disturbance was sufficient to send Michael Eisner packing once upon a time, and the same extremely influential ISS that helped facilitate that change, which ultimately resulted in Bob Iger ascending to CEO, is the same ISS now recommending against Iger's desires. So there are other institutions that have previously caused huge irreversible change at Disney, now advocating for Nelson Peltz to join the board. And they were influential in changing Disney, changing the shape of it moving forwards. So it speaks volumes. Now they say Walt Disney gave this nonsense response when ISS had recommended Nelson Peltz. While we're heartened to see support for Michael Froman and ISS's recommendation to withhold on dissident directors Jay Rasulo and the Blackwell's nominees, we strongly believe that ISS reached the wrong conclusion in its recent report when it comes to adding Nelson Peltz to the board. Right. In contrast, the Glass Lewis ISS fails to acknowledge the breadth of perspective and expertise Ms. Lago Massino adds to the board. The strong recent performance and results overseen by the Disney board demonstrate our focus on long-term shareholder value creation and succession planning and our commitment to good governance practices. Basically, if you don't agree with all of what we say, you're wrong. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. So there's no nuance here, essentially. Which is, again, baffling. Absolutely baffling. So I think, again, if you're going to track this with previous CEOs, you know, Michael Eisner, for instance, and, you know, a board shake-up, I genuinely do believe that Bob Iger's reign over Disney could be coming to an end. Because if Nelson Peltz gets on the board, he actually has to answer to someone. Not a bunch of lackeys that just nod along, go, yo, okay, yo, you should do whatever you want. Bob Iger, go have your 2 showers a day or whatever it is that he does in his bloody office that he loves so much. The bloody wanker. Oh, God. And Nelson Peltz has said, no, we're not against Bob Iger. We're just against where Disney's going. It's like, oh, okay, fine. So we're fascinated to see what happens. But Nelson Peltz leading is a huge, huge thing. Massive. Cannot be overstated. This is major. Now, leaking it, is it appropriate? No, not really. But there's always 2 reasons why people leak stuff, right? In terms of movies, anyway. And I think the same can be said for this here. People leak stuff on movies because they're like, oh my God, this is terrible. You know, we need to leak this just to get it out there. When it's a bad movie, for instance, and they want to complain about it. Or they leak stuff because it's so good. This is probably on the so good level. Maybe there's some dissident people in at Disney leaking stuff because they're like, yes, Nelson Peltz, please get on the board. Or it could be because it's terrible and they think that maybe leaking it would cause more people to rally quickly to Bob Iger, and then they can leak further revelations that Bob Iger leads. Who knows? It is what it is. What do you guys think? Love to hear your thoughts, so drop it down below. Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye-bye now.